Do you feel like the U.S. has let you down in this case, or do you have patience for this process to slowly unfold?
We respect the rules of American democracy, but I'd like to appeal to Speaker Johnson, as a former speaker myself, and as the foreign minister of Poland, and on behalf of all of the European Union. In fact, please let democracy decide this issue. Please allow this Ukraine supplemental to go to a vote, because otherwise, if you preclude your commander-in-chief from doing what he wants to do, which is to help Ukraine defend itself, U.S. credibility will be damaged.
We heard from a number of lawmakers who received that message at the Munich Security Conference.
I was there.
If you were indeed, if this bill does not get to the floor in the U.S. House, is there a plan B for Europe to try to make up for some of that money?
Well, remember, Europe contributes more to Ukraine than the United States. We've already contributed 80 billion roughly, and we've passed another 50. The Ukrainian state would not be functioning without us sending them 1.5 billion euros per month. But you can't fight the war with pensions and employee salaries. You actually need 155mm shells. You need the effectors to the Patriot missiles and so on. And those come overwhelmingly from the United States, from American factories. As Europe, we are making new purchase orders in the United States. But Ukraine needs to defend itself against this Russian onslaught.
But, Minister, Europe is missing. It's not going to deliver its own target of 1 million shells to Ukraine by March, as promised. That has now been pushed back.
That number
has not been delivered. How close is close, though, if we're talking roughly half and now that target's pushed to the end of the year? I just wonder if Europe, too, is failing Ukraine in some way here.
We are close. I've literally, before walking into the studio, received a copy of the letter of the High Representative, who's informed us, and I don't want to misquote it, but I think it's around 850,000 shells. We are gearing up our European industry for being able to produce 1 million shells per annum, and they will start arriving in quantity to Ukraine by the end of the year. But first of all, Ukraine still needs to survive till the end of the year. And secondly, the Russians have been ramping up their production even more. They've gone onto a war footing. And we are still on a peacetime basis, and we need to go into a crisis mode.
Well, so would you then support a notion like issuing hundreds of billions of euros in euro bonds to shore up Europe's defense industry? Because that has been floated.
It has been floated, but we have a more immediate decision to make about smaller amounts of money. Our defense budget in Europe, it's called the European Peace Facility. It's 5 billion. That would be enough to satisfy Ukraine's immediate needs, and we need to pass this urgently.
Minister Sikorski, our listeners and viewers should know that you were a war correspondent in Afghanistan, Soviet-occupied Afghanistan.
Yep.
We can talk about policy here, and that's what we like to do on Bloomberg. But I want you to talk to us about what's going to happen on the ground in Ukraine if these shells are not available, if this money doesn't come forth in a timely manner, because you've seen firsthand. That may have been the Soviet Union, but Vladimir Putin reminds many of us of that time.
I was in Afghanistan in the 1980s at a time when the U.S. was supporting the anti-Soviet resistance. Not many people were giving the anti-Soviet resistance a chance to defeat the mighty Soviet Union. And, you know, they did. And today also, most people seem to assume that Russia has to win. I disagree. I've been to the front line with Ukrainian soldiers delivering pickup trucks there before I assumed the current office. The shortage of artillery shells means that Ukrainians soldiers are dying in greater numbers than they should be, because it means that the clash is a direct infantry soldier-to-soldier fight. And we can save lives by delivering these 155mm shells.
And you believe they can win this David and Goliath fight after what you saw in Afghanistan. But this comes down to hardware, is what you're saying.
Yes. Russia lost the Crimean War. Russia lost the Russo-Japanese War. Russia was knocked out of World War I. Russia lost the Battle of Warsaw in 1920. And Russia lost the Cold War.
So much for the war machine.
Look, when the Ukrainians are fighting for the very existence of their country, President Putin doesn't regard Ukraine even as a nation. So they know that if they lose, they'll be deported, their children will be stolen, they'll be subjects of cultural genocide. Whereas the Russians, are fighting with their prisoners and reluctant draftees. But you still cannot fight with bare hands. We've pledged to help Ukraine. The President of the United States in wartime made a historic speech in Kiev saying Ukraine will have American support, whatever it takes. Now is the time to stay the course, to deliver the arms.
Well, Minister, it's the current president of the United States that made those remarks, but he very well could no longer be president come January of next year. And we've all heard what the former president, who could once indeed get a second term, Donald Trump, has said about NATO countries like Poland, suggesting that if these countries aren't paying enough money, Russia could do whatever the hell it wants to those allies. Would you view Poland as less safe under a potential second Trump administration?
Look, I won't interfere in your politics, and Poland spends over 3% of GDP on defense. And let me just remind you that Article 5 has only been invoked once so far, after 9/11. And we all rallied round. Poland sent a brigade to Ghazni, a tough province in Afghanistan, and we didn't send an invoice to Washington. The military alliance is not a neighborhood security company.
Well, that is a fair enough characterization. Of course, as we look ahead then to what could come after the election, or what maybe should come before the election in November, as we have this conversation about the very possible chance that Congress does not pass additional aid to Ukraine, should the U.S. before election use frozen Russian assets to help support the cause? Is that something Poland would support?
Yes, we do, because the aggressor should pay for the consequences and the damage of the aggression. Russia is not going to see this money anyway. The G7 has said that the money will not be unfrozen until Russia pays reparations to Ukraine. So the only choice is whether Ukraine should get this money after the war or now when she needs it more. And in answer to your earlier question, if the supplemental doesn't go through, and U.S. allies are disappointed and get the idea that the United States might not be able to help you even when the commander-in-chief wants to help you, that will have profound consequences for all of American alliances around the world. Some countries will start hedging, and others will be considering developing their own nuclear weapons programs.